Nkosi Sikelele, Africa. Malo pakaniso pandoayo. Izwe emetando zoye tu Nkosi Sikelele. Welcome. Habari gani? Funga alafia. There's many ways that we would like to say welcome to this program, to the show. To this, it is our duty, a 60-minute broadcast, virtual broadcast. It's a weekly Black radical tradition, political education that we bring to you. Not just here in 2021, where we are thinking of 525,600 minutes needed for political education. Not just because there's a need for 24/7, 365 days of the year for political education, but because we have an opportunity as the Parable of the Sower Intentional Community Cooperative to at least allow this political education, virtual time together for 60 minutes. 60 minutes of information through a Black radical tradition says a lot. It says that we can breathe together, take the space outside of what normal TV and video productions look like. We are instead going to allow us to come together, to listen to words from political prisoners for a whole year, every week. Listen to young people that may have been isolated. Young brothers and sisters may have been in prison, may have been young people that are afraid to even go in the streets, young people that have taken their lives and brought themselves into the streets throughout this country to protest. We will also say it is our duty when we're going to talk to elders who have not had family to connect with, who have had no one to speak to them, but maybe the person dropping off mutual aid. And those disabled. There's many of us that are, including myself, because we all come from this place of being traumatized from post-traumatic slave disorder. And so what does that look like? That we talk to those most needed, but also surround political education thought as one thing, the Black radical thought as one thing, but the actions that everyone can take if you're in the streets, like some of you all have been, or if you are at home. We need everyone. We need intergenerational, young and old. We need those that are home alone. And the difference in what we're talking about for this political action, this education, this virtual reality of Black radical tradition is it's not just about the elections. So I am glad as your host today, it is our duty, host Alita Torre, but there will be others from the Parable of the Sower Intentional Community that will join and be a part. It is important that we allow you to share with us for 1 hour these things. Today, we are coming from the global perspective. We're going to show you on the words that we have just to introduce what is it like to live cooperatively. What were the words of some of the people in different communities? So in order to do that, we have some pieces of paper we want to show you. The biggest thing too is that we are going to get this ready to show you some of these visuals. But I want it to be known that when we say habari asubuhi, which is what I first said, it means good morning. Habari gani means what is the news, like we had from Kwanzaa. We're saying that the system is broken. That's the first thing. And that the latest news is that we have much to do in 2021 to fight against imperialism, to abolish police brutality, to end housing discrimination, to provide health care, unity for all, and start a new world that we all feel safe. We can all do this if you're in the streets, if you're in the political arenas, or if you are at home. It's important that the great turning, as they call, gives us the call with a new president, as they say, and vice president replacing the tyrant fascist regime that was, to a more democratic regime, right? We're saying, but that is not enough. We're saying that the people must strike. We're saying that our political is still a reform process to systematic oppression, and we must demand a transformation which includes democracy for including, not for just the middle class, but also for the working people. John Lewis said, if it hadn't been for the media, the civil rights movement would have been like a bird without wings or a choir without a song. We forepassed civil rights into this human rights movement era to bring you in. And we cannot do that unless we support the political education. So on that note, that was my biggest thing. I am setting up this first slide that we have, which is actually a short video. And it's to explain why the parable of the sower, why are we doing it? We are mothers and organizers. Oops, and since that started too fast, I'm going to start that again. And that's how we, that's how we are going to handle this today by sharing the screen so that you can see that visual. And then we can go right into the subject matter at hand. Here it is. Bear with us. Yes, so there you have it. That was our spiel to talk about who we are in a sentence, but this isn't really about us. We aren't connected on land yet. The women of the parable of the sower, who are activists and organizers and strategists, haven't found the land in this country yet. And there's a reason. Because we come out of a Black radical tradition, there is a way that things have happened in this country that brings us to the most important thing of what we need in political education, the international global perspective. The international global perspective, I am going to start with the slide. And let me see if I can put this up here for you. This slide is to introduce our sisters from our motherland. And these sisters of mine from my motherland, that are our motherland, come from Umoja, the Moja village in Kenya. And if you can see this on your screen right now, it shows you Umoja village in Kenya, Acapone village in Jamaica, the Republic of New Africa housing in Mississippi, the Gullah Geechee in the U.S., which is the eastern parts of the country, all the way from North Carolina, all the way down to Florida and Jacksonville, the Quilombos in Brazil, and the Palenques in Cuba and Colombia. So from this, as I come back, I want to introduce that first place. I have been blessed as some of the group members of our cooperative to understand the importance of land. And I don't want to start it from here because it hasn't started for us here. again, it's about the international global perspective. And if we are to actualize the next part of the chapter of not being or going into the normal, we have to remember who we are. Mamiya spoke on our Kwanzaa program and he asked, who are we? Who are we means, says that we really have different ideas and thoughts of who we are. And that's why we'll be focusing on the political prisoners also, again, every week. But this week, who are we? He talked about Mamiya when he spoke on our show from the recordings for Ujima, Collective Work and Responsibility, the third day of Kwanzaa. He spoke of a need for collective consciousness, a consciousness where all of our different dichotomies of who we've become in this country, despite the fact we spoke 50 different languages and even more from the 54 countries in Africa. When we were brought here, we had different languages. It's now more about us forgetting who we are, that even despite the differences of states and countries, right? States here and countries in Africa, they've come together as Africa. And that's from that one song you may remember, Nkosi Sikelele Africa. They remember the strength of unity. So on this first introduction that I might say that we're going to show you, I am going to now paste in here our community that we would like to start with. Okay? And so in doing that, I bring to you this first community, and it's called the Acapone Village. Acapone Village is in Jamaica. Acapone Village is a historical maroon village located in the hills of St. Elizabeth Parish on the island of Jamaica. It is located in something called Cockpit Country, where Jamaican Maroons and indigenous Taino established and fortified stronghold in the hilly terrain in 17th century, fighting for their sovereignty. They literally fought. They literally battled the British off of the top of Jamaica to say, no, you will not take our land. You will not take our destiny. We will fight you. And to this day, since the 17th century, there is a bill, a treaty that they received, that they won their sovereignty. These pictures show the place in Jamaica and St. Elizabeth. I'm very blessed to say I've been there. I'm excited I've been there. I was doing a pilgrimage retracing slavery called the Interfaith Pilgrimage of the Middle Passage. And the youth were the ones that showed me every part on that land. The youth had not learned from the schools as much, but from the historical pretense of who they were, so that every herb they knew why it would be good for us. And I'm sure they have remedies on things to ease, because God has made everything under the sun, and they would know naturally what could help with asthma or even things that we need for now in this COVID pandemic. So it was a blessing to be able to see that. I donated books to their library, and people can visit them. We will have them when we get on our land. We've already introduced ourselves in wanting to learn from them, their knowledge. They might not use the word cooperative. They're Acapone Village, but they come from a place of knowing that the resistance to people of color, to the Black diaspora, has been that they see the value in living cooperatively. This next one that we will look at, this community, very much in the same respect, as I bring this on up on the screen. Let's see if I can find that for you. Is the Gullah Geechee Nation. And so the Gullah Geechee Nation are African Americans who live in the Low Country region of the United States. The funding for their nation, has been coming from the federal government because they fought again to receive, even if it's been in court, their self-determination. Chiefess Queen Quet, who is such a wonderful woman, by the way, who is the queen. She goes out to make sure that people know of what they're doing. She's done research, and she makes sure that the land that was will not be taken from the Gullah community. So they now have an endowment for 100 million, or I forget how much it is per island or per community. But we be Gullah Geechee anointed people, and I've been very blessed to see and visit and learn from them. They make the best rice. They make the best of a lot of things, weaving, and just introducing into my own children who have performed on their ceremonial annual events, from Sapelo Island to Dafusky to Cherokee to Guchikunda. There is something to be said about when you fight for the territory you believe in when it comes to land. And so we are introducing these places because, as you saw, Queen Quet is a woman. And there is a way that, although we are mostly women, not all, but our children and our husbands and our uncles and our loved ones are also men who will be on our land. It is important why the leadership is woman for us. And so no other way to explain that than this next group that I am going to introduce to you. If I can get them here. And this next group, I have not met them. That's not the one yet. So I'm going to take this one off. I have not met this group, but I am in awe of their work. And that group of people, if you look on your screen, I'm going to pull that up now, are the women of the Mumoja village. They are the women who have decided to leave the villages in Kenya. It is important that we talk about the comparison between African matriarchal villages. Some people call that now the feminist economy, and the intentional communities that we are trying to build. One was built by oppressed Black women. And so these sisters, because of patriarchy, right? First of all, colonialism came about to our motherland. But patriarchal still exists even amongst our brothers and sisters in these communities, where women who are not only treated unfairly, are battered, are abused physically and emotionally. These sisters decided to leave their villages and come together. And if you look at them, you can see on the lower left side, the young brothers with the sister. And it's important to see that because you can also see the flag of Kenya there. But what this says to me, which is a picture of what we plan to do, is to talk about how we will fight. We will love and fight with our families to a new day through the streets, through the systems of oppression and the courthouses. But we also must recognize we will fight against patriarchy. And our sons are with us. And when we look at, unfortunately, what HUD properties and divisively taking the woman away from their men, right? But also having this place where men and women don't have a space to dialogue about the abuse that the Willie Lynch system had something to do with it, right? The Willie Lynch syndrome, if you know, had a lot to do with letting the men be battered in front of the woman, right? When the women were raped by the slave masters. And so in this knowing of what slavery has done in our post-traumatic slave disorder bodies, our traumatized bodies, we have a high rate of women in this country, African-American, BIPOC women, mostly African American from what I see in statistics, that aren't with their men. It's important also for women like me who are lesbian to also be able to talk about the fact that lesbian and gay also existed in Africa. This show is not just one ism. It's not just racism, which is why we talk about the international global perspective. It talks about the need for all of us to join together and all of our families, because we have not only brothers and sisters that are disabled, not only bodies of disabled, but also we have, the differences in languages, right? And so when someone is battered, like these women in Kenya, and they set up themselves apart, the beautiful thing of it was they was recognized throughout the United States, right? But throughout the world, because then they started to see, now they have 8 villages, men wanting to be a part of their communities. Men wanted to say, you know what? I understand why I shouldn't batter you or hit you, and this patriarchy has messed up our communities and families. So they are now accepting, because they do accept men who do the work, again, do the work around this thing called patriarchy. In our country of America, it has not been done as much. And we are here to say, when we receive our land, there will be times where we will have to sit to do the work of patriarchy. Yes, we do the work against imperialism. We're doing this work for racism, but to keep our families safe, where the children aren't just with their mothers, right? But they're in with communities. And there is a thing in placing, like Black Lives Matter has done, to work with trans in their convenings. We have much work to do. And we're not on land yet. We don't have a place to stop the clock, which goes 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? We have nonprofits we can go into. We have communities we connect in with. But we're hoping that for those of you that are interested in connecting to all of the movement-based Black radical tradition groups, you will find a way to do so here. More than just who's in the House of the Washington, D.C. office, who's more than in the house of the legislator in the states, who's more than the house, than the city halls. We elected those, yes, and that's one respect. But just as Nelson Mandela taught us, he was first a movement leader. And we do not train our movement leaders before they go into office in political education. We may have taught them in schools, and some have been very blessed to come from knowledge in African studies, or in learning some of the most, diverse and well-versed on the Black radical tradition professors. But most of our people in these legislative offices that are Black, even today, have not learned from the political education on this liberation. And that is why we're doing this, because our schools don't have it, and that's elementary. Our high schools don't have it. And sometimes in a college, you don't get it as well. And our homes may not have it. So 60 minutes is all we provide per week. And there are thousands, beautiful, wonderful movements that have been in this country that talks about this international global perspective and the global perspectives of what we call the Black liberation movement and the Black radical tradition. So on this next group that I'm going to put forward on this sheet, I do want to say one more thing about the Umoja Swahili village. We adorn our sister, Harriet Tubman, who was disabled and brutally battered and beaten by, traumatized by plantation owners. Armanita Ross was her name. She was an African abolitionist and humanitarian. And it's important that we connect her to the sisters, because when she raided on Cohambe River Valley, She freed the slaves, as we all know her history, but she was very much connected to the suffrage movement. And yes, she had men and women that she freed and brought into from to the South, into parts where there was no slavery anymore. But she was a suffrage because she understood her womanness even despite that. And there is a place where warrior women are who we are in movements for women, based on these women in Kenya who said, no, you will not hurt our bodies or our minds. And we shouldn't allow that in our homes. I shouldn't allow that with the person that I have my children with. And no one should allow it. It should be talked about, and there should be a community, if we were in a village, where it's talked about and someone's held accountable, just like we want our authorities in this country to be accountable. So we are glad to be in this perspective as women, building a place where people can come on land. And let's look at the next land piece. This next land place that I am hoping to show you, and I'm going to again pull up my share screen. We will get better at this as time passes, I am sure. On the share screen, we show you the Brazilian Quilombos. A Quilombo is a Brazilian hinterland settlement founded by people of African origin. Most of the inhabitants of Quilombos are Maroons, and that's a term for escaped slaves. The Quilombos are classified as one of the 3 basic forms of active resistance by enslaved Africans. And if you look at this map, and if you look at this map, I have a echo there. I'm going to show that again. This Quilombos shows that not only are there the spiritual element that you see of the sisters, the Boromote, our sisters who practice, who give in their lives. They put the ashe, as they call it, into the Catholic Church in Pelourinho. I was so blessed to be able to be in Brazil. I loved it because they look so much like us, right? The African diaspora shows us who we are. You know, most people know of the movie Quilombo, right, which showed not only the warriors of capoeira. When I used to do capoeira, it was very important to talk about the martial arts. But the other part was something we have in something called Kempumziko, is where they're always at peace, always ready to defend. So it's not anything different than what we learned in our African roots, that if you're at peace and you're chained down as a slave and you decide to go against that system, to live in harmony and cooperation with your people where you can be freed and see a human conditioning, it's okay. So we're getting close to what we're going to get to at the end, but we want to show you these sister girls here in Quilombo, the map that shows all the Quilombos all throughout their country. And I hope by watching this and seeing this map, and I was hoping to have a better visual, and I think I know how to do that now. So I'm going to try that real quick to show a better visual of this map and these communities. That's not the one. To show you a better visual, here it is. Let's see if I have it here. Yes, okay. One more tap on this computer. There it is. I want you to see how the map shows, I think it's 1,719. And that's the land pieces in Quilombos. And then it shows you the tribal lands, which is 189. The beautiful thing that I loved when I was in Brazil, about this thinking of fighting for what you believe in, to be on land, to be in community and cooperation as a human right, is that those lands are not only in the rural parts of Brazil, they're also in the cities. Shout out to Ileaye and Vovo, who I love, when I was working with Olodum in Bahia. The notion of it is that they've come together because, like the Acapone Maroon villages and the Maroon villages everywhere else, because they decided to fight back. And in any way you decide to fight back, you have to stand for something. And so this is our message in introducing first these places, international global perspective in political education, is so that you can get out of the lenses of what we see. When we say nonprofits, when we say battle of Olympic oppression, right? It takes us out of this, and we work through nonprofits. So I need to say that first, because there was a thing of, we're against nonprofits. We're against what it has happened to it, which is the nonprofit industrial complex, which it has been used for capitalism. It's been used to oppress others. It's been used instead of a circular place where everyone in the Colombo, like Ileaye and all those sisters in the Border Morte and all those people I met in Acapone village in Jamaica, democratically make decisions. In America, we have thrived in a little bit different way. I'm not going to say it's great or better. We do use something called the Rothschild principles, which talk about community. But I'm here to talk about the international global perspective of my people. The adoration and love and respect and humility I have of knowing that America doesn't do it all the way right all the time. This is America. And so even to be in politics, as my brothers and sisters are, I respect your work. But the international global perspective, when we talk about land, when we talk about cooperation, when we talk about how people have left Black communities in America because of Black flight, because of middle class-ish wants, isn't because we're saying you shouldn't want anything. It's because it's allowed most of the young people I love in hip hop, that I love, believe that it's more important to get your own, to have the $1 million that everyone is trying to strive to get to. We've got off course. And it's not our fault that we did not get the education at home. It's not our fault we didn't get the education in public schools or in high school. And for those brothers and sisters who do not go to college, and it's okay, because we used to talk about trades just as much as we talked about college. It's not your fault if you didn't learn from an elder in a rites of passage, which we also used to have. But there is a breath we will take collectively in cooperation to go back to those principles that we see sometimes in the brothers and sisters we love. When I go through Chinatown, we wonder, why is it they can come over in a boat, right, with nothing, and not to make fun, live together 15 in a house, and then in a year, they all have a home and they're all in college. Our trauma is different, right? And my brothers and sisters, even my Mexicano brothers and sisters, they may not have Chinatowns, but they live in their means sometimes, and they sometimes don't care how many they are together. We have been in this place after we've left a lot of the sharecropping families after slavery from from the old Jim Crow, to come and want this American dream. And we've decided that middle class is what we want. And that's when the mom and pops disintegrated in a lot of communities. So we'll talk about housing in these weeks of 2021, to talk about why we don't circulate the dollar 7 times anymore, why Black flight has meant that there are old, dusty malls in most Black communities where Black people strived. And we'll talk about why a lot of us are hoping and putting in for political education for you to return to the South or return to land, not for yourselves, not to get that $1 million like a lot of my brothers and sisters, you know, you who you are in sports and in entertainment. That's beautiful. But and then some people like Harry Belafonte, who gave his check even when he was making movies, right? Y'all know them beautiful songs Harry would sing, Uncle Harry, Uncle B, as we call him. He gave his money and his check to Martin Luther King, and he held accountable Beyonce and her husband to do the same, right? It was important that we hold each other accountable, and we don't have a place in a village where we sit down anymore. We're not on land. The elder isn't next to, and I mean elders from any movement that we've had in this country, don't sit next to the youth as much. Maybe in nonprofits, you know, but they're only open 9 to 5. Maybe on the streets when we're rioting, but we don't really get to talk as much about this stuff. So this next place that I'm going to go to here, I believe this next one, yes, I have respect for this one as well, and I'm going to pull up my screen just so I can talk about it while you are watching, is the Republic of New Africa. In this house right there on the top, the right hand, it says the unassuming house near Jackson State University served as the headquarters of the Republic of New Africa in 1971. One morning in August that year, Jackson police and the FBI raided the house without notice, resulting in a short shootout and the death of a JPD officer. And what I need to say about this is the Republic of New Africa is self-determination at its best, founded in 1968, the year I was born. The Republic of New Africa is a Black nationalist organization and movement in the United States popularized by Black freedom fighter groups. It was particularly for 3 goals: the creation of an independent Black majority country situated in the southeastern United States in the heart of the area of Black major population. It was for the payment of federal government of several billion dollars that we wanted for when we talk about reparations. A lot of the folks today, even the young people, are talking about reparations, but we have to give homage to those that first brought in this thought. And a lot of times the Black radical tradition in America is that we have amnesia. There is a reason they burnt down the Timbuktu. They didn't want us to know who we are, as Mamiya said on our show. Who are we? When you know that reparations is important today, and when you know that you work with a nonprofit that is eagerly trying to get that 40 acres and a mule, that piece of land that you know we all need to go to now because of 2020, the land where we see each other's faces and have the time outside of 9 to 5 nonprofits, give recognition to those people like the Republic of New Africa and Jessica Gordon Nimpart, who wrote the book Collective Courage, and Queen Mother Moore and Chokwe Lumumba. It's important that we don't cover anymore the political prisoners that fought for us, that we uphold them in the village while we're fighting, just as if we were in any 54 country of Africa, where while we were going out to fight for what was right, you know, which was warriors. And there's something what they've said. They don't want us to be warriors here. They want us to be just healers and politicians. And what that says is in that spirit of where we would sing together and dance together, and the elders would talk beforehand, the indigenous of who we are, they've tried to suppress because we were together. And if there's only the youth that go out in the streets, and they don't get to talk to the elders who's been there before, we lose places like West Oakland, where gentrification where the Black Panthers started, it's now gentrified, where the dollar doesn't circulate, and the needs of what has happened in drugs, which is now legal, right, has taken the people and traumatized them again. But, the hope that we can come together on land and communities and cooperatives to be politically educated. Yes, we can have nonprofit money and things to do more organizing and to free our political prisoners, which we do need to do. We'll be doing that every week. More importantly, we also need to come together. We have paranoia against each other. I can say myself, I always am in this place to wonder and guess what is the intentions, because the police and the systems against us have paid off many of people that look like us to destroy what we've built. But if we lived on land and worked together and had cooperatives and learned we can trust each other, there goes that word, maybe there can be a change. So you saw the Republic of Africa. And the next group that I want to show, hopefully I can pull this up because we are still on good time in this first show that we have. What we want to show you is another land called the Palenques. The Palenques are Cuba, but yes, they're also in other areas. What Palenques talk about and what they are very similar to the Maroon villages that we saw in Acapone Village in Jamaica and other islands, but the Cuban runaway slave settlements are Palenques. And here, if you look, these are bat caves. These are huts. These are places where they left. And there are books on it. And here's another flag again, Cuban flag. And as you can see, on the lower hand is a machete. So I'm not saying that, like Haiti, who regained its country because of Dessalines coming to the Dessalines tree and fighting back. We have had in this country where we fought back. The difference is we've seen what happened on February 6th. And I believe there is a consciousness, if we looked first, that they fought against the system from Quilombos. And they went to places out to rejoin together, collectively, cooperatively. But they had to make a choice to come back, to know that we're not the enemy of each other. In Maroon villages of the Quilombo Acapone village, where I said the young people taught me in the books I've donated, they fought back. And this is not so that people can go out, and we are definitely not telling people to make this a place where it is to insurrections like they did on, on January the 6th. What we're saying is we need to live cooperatively. And if you look at how we were as a people, we are never the ones that are starting the fights. We just want to live with each other. So Maroon villages I talked about. Yes, indeed. I talked about the Quilombos. Yes, indeed. I'm talking about the Palenques in Cuba. And remember, because of those Palenques is why they now have Black and African and, the culture where they are respected to each other. They're still working. When I've been there, they talk about how they still have some issues with race because slavery existed, but not like here. These are the principles we do not talk about. These are the things right now, since we are still sitting at home, we need to remind ourselves of or discuss. So we will be asking questions starting next week. And we hope that people will bring your thoughts, bring your dialogue. We want to have people's movement assemblies, PMAs on these lines. And that would mean I'm not talking as much. And the host who will be here with me, the young people who are going to host this, aren't talking as much, but we will be listening to you and dialoguing. In a democratic circle, in a university sin fronteras, university with all walls, it goes in a circle and everyone gets to talk. That has been our problem. Regionally, we don't listen to the East Coast, who has great skills, by the way. New York, y'all doing it. We don't listen to the Bay Area. They've been doing it when it comes to our people, changing things. The South, to me, that's where it's at. The Midwest, we don't even know where it is, really, right? The state's in there. So there is a need to have that dialogue with each other, to talk about the Black radical tradition, to remember who we are when we lived in communities, not to say nothing's wrong ever with us coming together and doing like the Republic of Africa is saying, and let's live on land where we have this territory. That's pretty much what's happened when we look at Chinatowns, when we look at Native American indigenous reservations. They have their own area, their own space. And somehow or another, because of classism, that's what I believe, and patriarchy, we have not seen the need to buy property together, to invest in our own banks again. But there's also because of fear. According to, again, Jessica Nimpard, Gordon Nimpard, which I will be discussing in our weeks. Hopefully she will be joining us. She talked about the times in this country we did from the 1700s until now, where state governors and mayors and police officers did not like us coming together. And they did everything they could, not just the stories of Rosewood, not just the stories of, what do you call it? The Wall Street, Black Wall Street. There was thousands of stories, and we need to hear them. And we need to uncover them and dust off those books in the Library of Congress and convene here or anywhere in your local area to discuss political education on what is our strategy for us and for the seventh generation. Let's take another breath. Breathe in and breathe out. This is not going to be another normal TV show either. I'm hoping that our show will bring about this global international perspective, that we include some of the people that we have not talked about. And so very quickly, I'm going to go through, now that we're almost to the end, some of the people from the political prisoners that we will be discussing with you. Okay, and so to start, I will like to show the, if I can pull this up quickly, some of the places that we will be connecting in with. And I'm having a hard time right now, but that's okay. And this is the first show, so, bear with us. In doing this, again, showing all these many different guests that we're going to have. Here it is. I am going to show my screen and just end so we can have us end on time. And here we are. So we will have, as we had from the political prisoners and prisoners of war and exile, we will have the families and the groups from Ijan, for Imam Jamil and Mumia Abu Jamal and Asada Shakur, and all of the many others that we believe and we love and we respect. that have not been talked about, especially during COVID, right? We will also have, and I'm going to get the next one ready because I'm really slow now, but I think I got the hang of this. Uh-oh, no. We will also have some of the political prisoners and their loved ones. Here is a shot of the sisters who are real Wakanda women, who are doing the work to support us to know Imam Jamil and Assata Shakur and keeping the tradition of songs and theory, because it's one thing for us to be in the streets and protesting, but we need to know the theory on this, right? And the loved ones from our movements. If y'all want to talk about a movie, that's great. We can talk about Wakanda. And I believe that we must see imagination, but we also must see the real facts on it. So we will not be combobulated on what is real and what is reality and how do we move forward for strategy. So I am going to paste this slide on, and this slide, which you will see now, shows you all the many traditions of who we are. And when this was made during Kwanzaa, it was because Mumia said that we have been fragmented. We have the Black feminists, which we need. They call upon the theory and those academic sisters, and even not those that really believe, that patriarchy needs to be ended, like myself. There's the Black socialists, and those are just as important because we don't agree with the capitalism, which always results to racism, right? And the Pan-Africanism, which really brings about our brothers and sisters, Kwame and Nkrumah, and all of our many freedom fighters that have come before us. But there's also the Black liberation theologists, right? And their works and what that meant to bring theology into the space of the red, black, and green. And then there's the Black nationalists, as we talked about Republic of New Africa. And then there's the Black futurists and Octavia Butler, who are Parable of the Sower. Intentional Community Cooperative is named after her book, Parable of the Sower. So we do and believe in envisioning. But it's important in coming together for collective consciousness, as Mumia suggested, is that we have to be humble. We have to see that we need the other. And all the nonprofits that I know and work with, and they're doing wonderful work, we have to be able to listen to each other. Which is why the World Social Forum outside of the US, because they can do it in international spheres, and the global spheres. When I went to Brazil and saw the Colombos to come together, no, they did not have the same paperwork and believed the same thing and regionally were the same, but they sat down and they listened to each other. I have a deep need to see all the nonprofits that want social freedom, social radical freedom for our people to come together. There's processes to make this happen, people. There's so many ways where we can just listen to each other, learn from healers, have them present when we get traumatized and buttons are pushed, just like we do when we have a family. But it takes work to come together with our families. And right now is more than ever, we need our families. And so any buttons that have been pushed, you now know you have to find a way. The democratic process we suggest that we'll be talking a lot about is the People's Movement Assembly, or the University Sin Fronteras, University Without Walls. Because all of the traditions, as you saw on that slide, have to come together. Mumia, we wait for him to be free, and we will make sure he is free, and as well as Mutulu, as well as Jalil, as well as Maroon, There's so many, right? But some of you may not have heard of their stories. And we need to hear of their stories on why the the Black Lives Matter has moved in the way they have. Why this thing on February 6th has always been, and we've known this. Many people believe insurrections wasn't going to happen. Many people knew it would. And you have to stay focused in your community. Feel free to contact us, info@parableofthesower.coop.com if you want to connect into a group that's locally near your area. We are not everywhere, but we are connected to our brothers and sisters in the movement of the Black radical tradition. So on this, we have a wonderful piece to end. We are grateful to have you welcome us into your homes. Our first lesson again for our children, please practice with them. Habari asubuhi, good morning. Bom or you can say habari mchana, good afternoon. We always want to make space for the children. We'll be doing more. Today was just an introduction, and we're grateful to have you with us. And if you can lift your fists, we say this together at the end. Nkosi sikelele Afrika, malopake nisu pandoayo, izwa imetandozo yetu. Nkosi sikelela tina uswapu wayo. Next week, stay tuned for our group speaker, our guest speaker, the National Black Liberation Movement Unification Unity National Director, Ashaki Bantu. Ashaki will be coming through as our guest speaker. We are so glad to have them. And as always, when we lift our fists again, it is our duty. It is our, did I play that right? It is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. So remember, always, please join us every week on Sundays, 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern. It is our duty. And together we can do this. Thank you and have a good night.